The night was quiet, and the small town of Nor Valley was almost asleep. Armand walked along the empty road with slow steps, thinking about his long day at work. He liked this time of night because it was peaceful. And no one tried to bother him, but tonight felt different. A strange kind of silence in the air, like the whole world was holding its breath as he walked past the open fields. He looked up at the sky. The stars were bright, and the moon sat low like a silver coin. Armand enjoyed watching the night sky. It made him feel small, but safe. But suddenly, his peaceful moment broke when the sky flashed bright white. It was not lightning, not a plane, not anything he had ever seen before. The light ripped across the sky like a burning line. Leaving a trail of sparks, the ground shook for a second. And a loud boom echoed across the fields. Armand froze, his heart thumping hard. He saw the bright object crash into the forest just a short distance away. Smoke rose above the trees, and a strange blue glow flickered between the branches. Armand hesitated, thinking maybe he should run home and mind his own business. But something deep inside pushed him forward. Maybe someone was hurt, maybe it was a meteor, or maybe something else. Curiosity pulled him like a magnet, and his legs moved on their own. He stepped into the forest, leaves crunching under his shoes. The air smelled burned and heavy, like metal and fire. He felt a strange tingling on his skin, as if the air itself was alive. As he got closer to the crash site, he saw pieces of glowing metal scattered around. They were shaped like panels, smooth and silver. Nothing like human-made objects. Armand's breath caught in his throat. Whatever fell from the sky was not normal. He crouched down and touched one of the metal pieces. But it was warm and vibrated softly under his fingers. He pulled his hand back quickly, confused and scared. Then he heard it, a soft, shaky sound like someone crying. Armand turned sharply, his eyes searching the shadows. The sound came again. A small whimper, frightened and weak. He followed the noise, pushing aside branches and stepping over broken pieces of the craft. And then he saw her. A small figure sat near the base of a tree. Her body curled into a ball. She looked like a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, but she was not human. Her skin glowed faint blue, like moonlight on water. Her hair shimmered with silver strands, floating lightly as if touched by wind that was not there. Her eyes were large, bright, and filled with fear. Armand's mouth went dry. He wanted to speak, but the shock glued his words in his throat. The girl looked up at him with trembling lips. She whispered one single word, "Mom." Her voice was soft, musical, and full of pain. Armand's heart twisted. This was a child, alone and terrified. Alien or not, she needed help. He stepped closer slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said gently, his voice shaking a little. "I won't hurt you." She stared at him, studying him like she was trying to understand his emotions. Then she pointed at the smoking wreck behind her and said again, "Mom." "Taken?" Armand frowned, trying to understand her broken words. Taken by whom? How? Before he could ask anything, the forest filled with a new sound. Engines, heavy boots, sharp voices. Someone was coming. Many people. Moving fast through the trees, Armand's blood ran cold. He quickly grabbed the girl's hand, which felt warm despite her alien skin. "We have to hide," he whispered urgently. She nodded, trusting him instantly. They slipped behind fallen logs and thick bushes just as a group of men entered the crash site. They wore black suits with strange equipment on their belts, not normal government uniforms. Their eyes scanned the area with cold, empty expressions. One of them said, "The target is close. Find the child before anyone else does." Armand felt the girl's hand tremble in his. She pressed closer to him, her glowing body dimming as if she was trying to hide her own light. Armand held his breath while the men searched the wreck. They spoke in a language mixed with English and something unfamiliar. These people were not rescuers, they were hunters. And they were hunting the girl. The leader of the group touched a small device, and a holographic image appeared. It showed the alien girl's face. Armand's heart pounded harder. These men would capture her. Maybe kill her. He knew he had only one choice. When the men moved deeper into the forest, Armand whispered to the girl, "Come with me. I'll protect you." Her glowing eyes softened with relief. She nodded and followed him quietly into the darkness. Armand did not know who these men were, or why they wanted her, but he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change forever. Armand moved through the forest with fast but careful steps. Guiding the small alien girl beside him, the night felt darker now, as if the trees themselves were closing in to hide them. Behind them, voices echoed, sharp and angry, telling Armand that the men in black suits were still searching. He tightened his grip on the girl's hand. Feeling her slight trembling, she was scared, alone, and hurt. And somehow she trusted him, a simple human from a quiet town. When they reached the edge of the forest, Armand paused, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The road was empty, and the street lights flickered, giving the whole place an eerie, abandoned feeling. He knew he couldn't stay out here for long. The men would spread through the town soon. He looked at the girl and whispered softly, "We need to go to my house." "You'll be safe there." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly, her glowing eyes softening with trust. They walked fast, staying close to the shadows. Armand kept checking behind them, nervous that the black suit men might appear any second, but the streets were silent. Only the sound of their footsteps and the distant hum of the night air. After several minutes, they reached Armand's small house at the edge of town. It was a simple place, not special in any way. But tonight, it felt like the only safe spot in the world. Armand unlocked the door quickly and guided the girl inside. She stepped into his living room and looked around with wide, curious eyes. Her glowing skin lit the walls gently, creating strange, soft reflections in the dim room. Armand locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. He didn't know if any of this would help, but doing something felt better than doing nothing. The girl sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around herself. Armand slowly sat across from her and spoke gently. "I want to help you, but I need to know your name." She blinked, then touched her chest lightly and said, "Lyra." Her voice was calm now, but still carried deep sadness. Armand repeated the name softly. "Lyra." "Okay." He pointed toward the forest and asked, "What happened there? Why were those men looking for you?" Lyra took a deep breath, her silver shifting hair floating slightly as if stirred by invisible air. She raised her small hand, and a soft blue light appeared above her palm. The light formed into pictures like moving holograms. Armand leaned closer, stunned by what he was seeing. The hologram showed a spaceship traveling through the stars. Then a sudden attack, dark figures, strange energy beams, destruction. Lyra pointed at the largest figure in the hologram, a creature with a mask and cold glowing eyes. She whispered, "Collectors." Armand frowned. Trying to understand, she showed another image, her mother being pulled away by the collectors. The image flickered, and Lyra's voice cracked as she said, "Mom." Taken, Armand felt a tight ache in his chest. This small child had lost her mother in a violent attack. On a ship far away from Earth, she had crash-landed here, alone, hunted by people pretending to be government agents. Armand had no idea what the collectors were, but he knew they were dangerous. And if they were on Earth, hiding among humans, everything was worse than he thought. Before he could ask more, a sudden beep sounded from the device on Armand's table. He frowned and picked up his phone. A news alert flashed. Unusual meteor event near Nor Valley. Government search teams deployed. Armand's stomach tightened. They were already spreading the lie. They would soon come door to door, using the meteor story as a cover. Lyra suddenly grabbed her head and winced in pain. Her glowing skin flickered like a struggling light. Armand rushed to her side and asked, "Are you okay?" She shook her head and placed her small hand on his arm. A wave of warmth spread through him, calming his fear and confusion. He realized she could sense emotions. "Maybe even share them," she whispered. "They are coming." "They feel close." Armand stood up quickly. Panic rushing through him, he went to the window and peeked out. A dark van rolled slowly down the empty street. Its headlights off, Armand's heart hammered in his chest. He turned to Lyra and said firmly, "We have to leave now. They found us." Lyra stood, her eyes glowing brighter with fear. Armand grabbed a small backpack and shoved a few items inside. But his hands shook. There was no time to think, only act. He turned off all the lights and took Lyra's hand. They slipped out the back door into the cold night as they moved through the yard. Armand heard the front door of his house break open with a loud crash. The men were inside, only seconds behind them. Armand whispered, "Stay quiet, stay low." Lyra nodded and followed closely. Her small steps silent on the ground, they ran into the darkness. Leaving the only home Armand had ever known behind him, he didn't know where they were going. But he knew one thing for sure, as long as Lyra was with him. Nothing in his life would ever be normal again. Armand and Lyra moved through the quiet back streets. Staying close to the shadows, the night felt heavier now, as if danger was following them with every breath. Armand's mind was racing, every step filled with fear and confusion. Lyra walked beside him silently, her silver hair glowing faintly like soft moonlight. She kept looking around as if she could feel things that human senses could not. After several minutes of walking, Armand stopped near an old abandoned workshop. It was broken, dusty, and forgotten, but it offered a place to hide. He pushed the rusty door open, and they stepped inside. The smell of old oil and metal filled the air. Armand pulled the door shut and listened carefully for any sounds outside. Everything was still, but he knew the silence wouldn't last long. Lyra sat on a wooden crate and held her knees to her chest. Armand knelt in front of her and asked softly, "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, but her eyes looked distant. She whispered, "The collectors. They are close." "But not only them." Armand frowned, confused by her words. "Not only them? Who else is looking for you?" he asked. Lyra hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. Then she lifted her hand, and a soft blue light appeared in her palm again. The light grew brighter and formed into a floating hologram. Armand watched with wide eyes, amazed and terrified at the same time. The hologram showed the night sky filled with strange symbols and paths. Lines connected stars like a giant map of the universe. Lyra pointed at a glowing cluster of stars and said, "My home." Her finger moved to another part of the hologram. "A dark, swirling cloud of unknown energy," she whispered. "The collectors live here." Armand felt a cold shiver run through him. The hologram shifted again, showing ships huge. Terrifying ships controlled by powerful beings. They hunted rare species, collected them, and sold them like trophies. He could see Lyra's fear through her trembling hands. Then the hologram changed again. It showed a small, bright spark Earth. Lines from the collector region stretched toward Earth like searching tendrils. Armand's stomach tightened as he understood the meaning. "They knew you were coming here," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her voice shaking. "They followed my mother. They followed our ship." Armand felt anger rise in him. This child had lost everything. And now these aliens wanted to use Earth as their hunting ground. "We need to find your mom," Armand said firmly. "We won't let them take her." Lyra looked up at him. Her eyes shining with hope and sadness, she placed her glowing hand on his arm, and he felt a warm wave of courage wash through him. "You are kind," she whispered. "Humans." Strong hearts. Before Armand could speak, a loud, mechanical sound echoed outside. He quickly peeked through a crack in the workshop wall. His breath caught in his throat. A black drone hovered above the street, scanning the area with a red beam of light. It was not human technology. Its design was smooth, almost alive, with strange patterns glowing across its surface. Lyra stood up quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. She whispered, "Collector drone." "It found us." Armand's heart pounded as he looked around the small workshop for options. He spotted a narrow back exit and pointed toward it. "Come on, we need to move now," he said urgently. They ran through the dark workshop and pushed open the back door. Cold air rushed in, and the sound of the drone grew louder. Armand grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her behind the building. The drone passed overhead, scanning everything with its harsh red light. They crouched low, holding their breath. The drone hovered, paused, then moved away slowly. But Armand knew it would return soon. "We can't hide forever," Armand whispered. "We need answers, and we need a plan." Lyra nodded. Wiping tears from her cheeks, she whispered, "There is a place. Maybe help." Armand leaned in. "Where?" With trembling fingers, Lyra drew a shape in the dirt, a star-like symbol with 3 points. "A human place," she said softly. "Old research." "Secret, my mother told me." Armand recognized the shape. It was the same symbol used by an abandoned military research building near the mountains. The place had been shut down years ago after a strange accident. People said the government used it for experiments. But no one really knew. Armand felt a strange mix of fear and hope. If Lyra's mother had visited that place before, maybe clues were left behind. He stood up and took a deep breath. "All right," he said. "We go there, but we have to be careful." Lyra nodded and stood beside him, her glowing body dimming to blend into the night. Armand pushed the workshop door open gently. Checking the street again, the drone was gone. But the danger still hung thick in the air. They stepped out into the night. Moving silently toward the mountains, Armand felt fear, but also a strange sense of purpose. He didn't understand the universe Lyra came from, but he understood one thing clearly. He was now part of a story far bigger than his old life. And there was no turning back. Armand and Lyra moved toward the mountains, following a narrow dirt path that looked forgotten by time. The night was colder here, and the wind blew through the trees with a lonely sound. Armand pulled his jacket tighter and glanced at Lyra, who walked beside him silently. Her soft blue glow was faint now, almost invisible in the darkness. It was as if she was trying to hide her own light from the skies above. They walked for almost an hour until the trees began to thin. Ahead of them stood a tall fence covered in rust, wrapped with old warning signs. The abandoned research building sat deeper inside. Half hidden by shadows and wild plants, it looked like something from a forgotten war. Broken windows, cracked walls, and silence everywhere. Armand felt a chill run through him. Even without the collectors, this place felt dangerous. Lyra pointed at the building's rooftop where a broken satellite dish still stood. "My mother. She sent messages from here," Lyra whispered. Armand nodded, understanding that this place once connected Earth to something far beyond it. He inspected the fence and found a weak section where the metal had bent outward. "Through here," he said softly, pushing the gap wide enough for them to slip through inside the fence. The ground was uneven and covered with old equipment pieces. Armand guided Lyra toward a side entrance that looked less damaged. The metal door was rusted, but with a hard push, it creaked open. A stale smell filled the air. Like dust and forgotten secrets, they stepped inside carefully. Their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Armand used his phone's flashlight, shining the beam across peeling paint and broken tiles. This place feels wrong, he muttered. Lyra nodded. Many experiments here. Many secrets. Armand swallowed hard, wondering what kind of secrets she meant as they reached an old control room. Lyra walked to a large console covered in dust. She touched the panel with her glowing fingers, and the dead screen flickered to life. Armand stepped back in shock. "How did you do that?" he whispered. Lyra whispered, "My kind. We hold energy. We speak to machines." The screen showed old maps and encrypted data. Lyra swiped her hand across the console, and new images appeared, holographic records created long ago. One of them showed her mother speaking with a human scientist. Armand leaned closer, unable to believe his eyes. The scientist was talking about gateway energy, interworld signals, and unknown species. He felt his stomach twist, realizing humans had known about aliens long before today. Lyra touched the hologram of her mother with gentle fingers. She whispered, "She came here for help." Humans tried to help, but collectors attacked. Armand listened quietly as the hologram switched to another recording showing chaos alarms blaring, lights flashing, people running. The collector ships appeared above the building, firing beams of energy. The recording ended with static and darkness. Armand exhaled slowly. "So this building was shut down because of the attack," he said. Lyra nodded, tears gathering in her bright eyes. "My mother escaped, but she was hunted." Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed through the hallway. Armand jumped, his heart racing. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Lyra stepped back from the console, her glow dimming further as fear crossed her face. Voices spilled through the corridor like a cold wind. Armand recognized them, the same voices from the forest. The black suit men, they had found the building. Armand grabbed Lyra's hand and looked around for another exit. But the room had only one door and boarded windows. He cursed under his breath and whispered, "Hide behind the consoles." "Quick!" They ducked down just as footsteps approached the entrance. The door burst open, and 3 men entered. Scanning the room with flashlights, Armand held his breath, praying the shadows would hide them. One of the men spoke into a device. "We found energy signatures. Confirm her presence." Lyra trembled, holding her hands tightly. Armand gently placed his hand over hers to calm her. "We keep moving," he mouthed silently. After a few tense seconds, the men spread out. Searching the corners of the room, Armand knew they had only moments before being discovered. He spotted a loose metal grate on the floor near a broken cabinet. With slow movements, he crawled toward it and lifted the grate silently, revealing a dark maintenance tunnel below. He gestured for Lyra to follow. She nodded and climbed down, her small body glowing softly in the dark tunnel. Armand dropped after her and pulled the grate back into place. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, hearing the muffled shouts of the men above them. The tunnel was tight, cold, and filled with dust. Armand coughed quietly, trying not to make noise. After several minutes, they reached a ladder that led up to another room. Armand climbed first and pushed open the hatch. They emerged inside what looked like an old laboratory filled with broken machines and shattered glass. Lyra looked around and whispered, "My mother worked here." Armand touched her shoulder softly. "Then maybe we'll find something she left behind." Lyra walked toward a large metal locker and placed her hand on it. The locker clicked open by itself, responding to her energy. Inside lay a small glowing sphere, pulsing with soft blue light. Lyra lifted it carefully and held it close. "This is her message," she whispered. "She left this for me." For us, Armand felt a spark of hope for the first time that night. If the message held clues, they might finally know where Lyra's mother was taken. But before they could activate the sphere, a distant explosion shook the floor. The collectors and the black suit men had discovered the tunnel. Armand grabbed Lyra's hand once more. "Come on," he said breathlessly. "Our mission just started." "And we need to stay ahead of them," Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing with determination. Together, they ran toward the next exit, carrying the only clue that could save her mother, and maybe even Earth. The night stretched long as Armand and Lyra moved deeper into the mountain region. The cold air bit at Armand's skin, but he ignored it, keeping his focus on Lyra and the glowing sphere she carried. The sphere pulsed gently, guiding them like a soft blue heartbeat. "It will show the way," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with both hope and fear. Armand nodded, following its glow through narrow rocky paths and dark valleys. After an hour of walking, the sphere's light flickered and pointed toward a deep trench between two cliffs. Armand leaned forward and looked down. At first, it seemed like just shadows. But then he saw it, a hidden metallic structure built into the mountain. Large and silent, almost completely invisible from above. It wasn't a human building. The surface was smooth, glowing with faint alien patterns that shifted like moving ink. Lyra's voice trembled. "Collector base." Armand felt a chill cut through him. "So this is where they took your mother," he whispered. Lyra nodded softly, her eyes glowing with sadness and fear. But there was also determination burning inside her. She was ready to face whatever waited below. They climbed down the rocky slope carefully, the ground slippery beneath their feet. Once they reached the base, Armand touched the metallic surface with a shaky hand. It felt warm, like touching the skin of a living creature. Lyra stepped closer and placed her palm on a small symbol etched on the wall. The lines glowed brighter, responding to her energy. With a low hum, a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow, dark hallway. Armand swallowed hard. "Okay, we're really doing this." Lyra held his hand tightly, her voice barely a whisper. "We must." They stepped inside, the door closing behind them with a quiet hiss. For a moment, the darkness swallowed them. Then strange lights slowly lit up. Floating in the air like tiny stars, they moved on their own, forming a path deeper into the base. Armand and Lyra followed them cautiously. The hallway opened into a larger chamber filled with tall glass tanks. Armand felt his breath catch in his chest. Inside the tanks were strange creatures. Some looked peaceful, others dangerous, all trapped in glowing liquid. Each tank hummed softly, as if keeping its prisoner asleep. Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Collectors keep rare life forms. They sell them." Armand clenched his fists, anger burning through him. "These monsters," he whispered. "They treat living beings like objects." Lyra nodded, tears forming in her glowing eyes. She placed her hand on one of the tanks gently. The creature inside, a small, four-armed being, stirred slightly, sensing her energy. Armand realized then that Lyra felt connected to every trapped life inside this base. They moved past the tanks and reached another metallic door. When it slid open, Armand's eyes widened. The room was filled with machines, screens, and devices unlike anything on Earth, but his attention snapped to the center of the room where a large circular cage stood. Inside it, floating in a beam of bright light, was a woman with glowing blue skin, Lyra's mother, weak and unconscious. Suspended in some kind of stasis field, Lyra ran forward, her hands pressed to the transparent barrier. "Mom," she cried, her voice breaking. Armand felt a heavy wave of emotion wash over him. He had never seen Lyra this desperate, this human. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll get her out, I promise." But before they could act, a cold voice echoed through the room. "Well, well. The runaway child returns." Armand spun around, pulling Lyra behind him. A tall figure stepped out of the shadows, a human-looking man in a dark suit with eyes that glowed unnaturally white. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I am the handler," he said. Leader of this collector branch, Armand's heart pounded. The handler continued, "You humans fear what you do not understand. But you are also useful." His cold gaze settled on Armand. "You brought the girl straight to us," he said with a thin smile. Armand felt anger boil inside him. "You're trapping innocent beings," he shouted. "You're hurting a child." The handler tilted his head, amused, innocent. He repeated, "Her kind carries rare power. Power valuable in many worlds." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing bright with fury. "You took my mother." She cried, "You hurt my people." The handler raised an eyebrow. "Only business," he said coldly. Lyra suddenly lifted her hand. An energy crackled at her fingertips. Armand grabbed her quickly, whispering, "Not yet. We need a plan." The handler pressed a button on a control panel. Red alarms blared, and doors locked around them. Sealing them inside, more collectors' tall, armored figures with glowing visors stepped into the room. Surrounding them, Armand's heart raced. They were trapped. Outnumbered and unarmed, he looked at Lyra, who held the glowing sphere tightly against her chest. In this moment, Armand understood something deeply. Saving Lyra's mother would not be a silent mission. It was going to be a battle, a dangerous fight for survival. The handler smiled coldly. "Prepare them," he ordered. "We begin the extraction at dawn." Armand pulled Lyra close and whispered, "We're not giving up. We'll find a way out." Lyra nodded with fierce determination, her eyes burning with hope and anger, even surrounded in the enemy's base. Even with alarms screaming around them, Armand knew one thing. This was only the beginning of their fight. The alarms echoed through the collector base like a heartbeat of danger. Red lights flashed across the metallic walls, making every shadow look alive. Armand stood close beside Lyra, his breath shaking but his mind sharp. They were surrounded, locked inside a room full of machines and armored guards, but Armand refused to let fear win. Lyra's mother floated helplessly inside the stasis chamber, her glow fading with every passing minute. Lyra looked up at Armand, her eyes full of fear and determination. "We must save her before they take her power," she whispered. Armand nodded. "Yes. But we need a distraction." His eyes darted around the room, searching for anything they could use. His heart pounded like thunder. But he forced himself to think clearly. The handler stood on the raised platform, calmly observing them. "Your struggle is pointless," he said, his voice cold. "The extraction will begin at dawn." Lyra's grip tightened around the glowing sphere still held in her hands. Armand noticed something strange. The sphere was glowing brighter now, pulsing like a living heart. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "It wants to help." "My mother left power inside it." Before Armand could respond, one of the armored guards stepped forward. He grabbed Lyra's arm roughly, but the sphere suddenly burst with a strong flash of blue light. The guard was thrown back as if hit by a forceful wave. Crashing into the wall with a loud metallic thud, Armand felt the shockwave too. But Lyra held his hand with her glowing energy, keeping him safe. The handler narrowed his eyes, no longer amused. "So the child activates the relic," he said slowly. "Interesting, but still useless." He gestured toward the other guards, who charged forward with weapons drawn. Armand pulled Lyra behind a large console panel, barely dodging a beam of red energy that sliced through the air. The heat from the blast burned the side of his jacket, making him stumble. Lyra lifted her hand, her eyes glowing bright as she cried out. A wave of blue energy erupted from her palm, knocking 3 guards off their feet. Armand stared in awe. Her power was growing, raw and uncontrolled, but they needed it to survive. Lyra. The chamber, Armin shouted, pointing toward her mother floating in the beam of light. Lyra nodded and rushed forward, dodging more beams fired by the guards. Armin followed close behind, using the console panels as cover. The handler moved to block their path. His glowing white eyes locked on Armin. "You're a brave human," he said. But bravery means nothing without power. Armin clenched his fists. Maybe? But sometimes protecting someone is stronger than any power. He grabbed a loose metal bar from the floor and swung it at the handler. The handler caught it easily. Snapping it in half with one hand, Armin's eyes widened. But he did not run. Instead, he tackled the handler with all his strength, pushing him back off the platform. The impact shook the ground, giving Lyra the seconds she needed. She reached the chamber and placed both hands on the barrier. Her glow grew brighter, spreading across the entire device. The stasis field flickered, cracked, and then shattered like glass breaking underwater. Her mother slowly fell forward, weak and barely conscious. "Mom," Lyra whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. Armin struggled to stand, pain shooting through his side after hitting the floor with the handler. The handler rose to his feet again. Unfazed and furious, he raised his hand, gathering energy for a deadly strike. But before he could release it, Lyra stepped in front of Armin and her mother, her whole body glowing like a small star. "No more," she said, her voice shaking with power. A blinding wave of blue light burst from her, filling the entire chamber. Machines exploded. Guards were thrown like broken toys, and alarms howled louder than before. The handler shielded himself with dark energy, but even he staggered back. Armin covered Lyra's mother with his body as the shockwave roared through the room. When the light faded, smoke filled the air. Most of the guards lay unconscious. The machines sparking and broken, the handler knelt on the floor. Breathing heavily, his glowing eyes dimmed. Armin lifted Lyra's mother gently. Feeling her weak heartbeat, Lyra fell to her knees. Exhausted, her glow fading. Armin placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it?" "You saved her." Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. "But the base, it will explode." I felt the core break. Armin's heart jumped in panic. "If this place blows, we need to get out now," he said urgently. He lifted Lyra's mother onto his back and grabbed Lyra's hand. Together, they ran toward the exit door at the far end of the chamber. Behind them, the base shook violently as sparks rained from the ceiling. Armin pushed through the hallway, dodging falling metal and burning cables. The sphere in Lyra's hand flickered and opened a glowing path, guiding them toward freedom just as they reached the final door. An explosion blasted behind them. The force knocked Armin forward, pain slicing through his shoulder as he shielded Lyra's mother. They stumbled out into the cold night, collapsing on the rocky ground. The mountain rumbled as the collector base collapsed inward, disappearing into a cloud of dust and fire. Armin coughed and tried to stand, but pain surged through him. Lyra knelt beside him, tears in her glowing eyes. "You saved us," she whispered. "But you carry my energy now. Your life will change." Armin felt a strange warmth inside his body, something new and unfamiliar. He looked at Lyra and managed a weak smile. "If it helps you stay safe, then I don't mind." The night was silent again. But Armin knew everything had changed forever. The mountain was silent after the explosion. Only thin smoke drifted into the night sky. Glowing faintly in the moonlight, Armin lay on the cold ground, breathing hard as the strange warmth inside his body pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Lyra knelt close, her small hands glowing as she touched his shoulder. Beside them, her mother lay weak but alive, her soft blue skin flickering with signs of life. Armin pushed himself up slowly, ignoring the sharp pain in his ribs. "Is she okay?" he whispered, nodding toward Lyra's mother. Lyra nodded, tears shining in her bright eyes. "She will live." You saved her, she said softly. Armand looked relieved, even though his whole body ached. The night wind blew gently over the rocky ground. Carrying an unsettling quiet, suddenly Lyra's mother opened her eyes. Weak but aware, her gaze settled on Armand. And she spoke in a soft, musical voice. You carry the echo now, she whispered. My daughter shared her power to protect you. Armand blinked, confused. Echo. Lyra's mother nodded slowly, a bond between life and energy. It will change you. Armand placed a hand on his chest where the strange warmth continued to pulse. So this feeling. It's because I helped Lyra, he said, trying to understand. Lyra's mother smiled weakly. Not just helped. You protected her with your life. A deep silence followed. Filled with meaning Armand didn't fully understand yet. They rested for a few minutes, catching their breath. The stars above seemed brighter now, as if watching their struggle from afar. But the peace didn't last for long. Lyra suddenly looked toward the sky, her eyes narrowing with fear. They are coming, she whispered, not collectors. Others, Armand stood up quickly despite the pain. What do you mean? More enemies? He asked, his voice tense. Lyra shook her head. Not enemies. Not friends. Watchers, her mother weakly pointed to a glowing patch of sky. Armand followed her gaze and felt his heart skip a beat. Dozens of strange ships appeared silently, their shapes smooth and elegant like silver birds. They hovered above the mountains, casting soft blue light over the rocks. Armand's breath caught in his throat. More aliens, he whispered. Why are they here? Lyra's mother answered. They followed the energy, the echo, and the destruction of the collector base. Bright beams of light shined down from the ships. Forming circles around them, Armand stepped protectively in front of Lyra and her mother. Lyra tugged his sleeve gently. No. They are from my mother's world, she said softly. Armand relaxed a little. But tension still sat heavy in his chest. Moments later, 3 tall figures floated down through the beams. They wore shimmering robes and armor unlike anything Armand had seen. Their eyes glowed softly, and their movements were slow and calm when they landed. They bowed to Lyra's mother respectfully. One of them spoke in a warm, echoing voice. We came to return you home. Lyra looked at Armand with sadness in her eyes. This means? I must leave Earth, she whispered. Armand felt something sink deep inside him. He had known this moment would come. But the thought of losing her made his chest tighten. He looked down at her small hand, still holding his. Lyra's mother stepped closer to Armand. Her voice soft. You've changed many things tonight. For my daughter, for me, and for your world. Armand nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. The alien leader approached and studied Armand with glowing eyes. You carry the echo. You cannot stay here safely, he said. Armand frowned. Why not? The echo marks you. And others across the stars will sense it. Some will seek you, the leader explained. Armand looked back toward the dark forest, imagining his old life, his small house, his town, his quiet evenings. All of it seemed far away now, like a memory fading behind him. Are you saying I have to leave Earth? He asked quietly. Lyra stepped closer and touched his hand gently. You do not have to. But if you stay, danger will follow you, she whispered. Armand closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of everything that had happened. The crash, the chase, the fear, the battles. The strange power now inside him. He had lost his old life long before reaching this mountain. He opened his eyes and looked at Lyra. Her glowing face was filled with hope and sorrow. What happens if I come with you? Armand asked softly. Lyra squeezed his hand. You will be safe. And you will not be alone, her mother added, and you may learn to control the echo. Make it part of your strength. Armand looked at the sky filled with shimmering alien ships. He felt the warm pulse in his chest echo inside him. He thought of how far he had come, how much he had changed. Finally, he smiled gently. "I'll go with you," he said, his voice calm and certain. Lyra's eyes filled with bright joy as she wrapped her arms around him. Armand hugged her back, feeling peace for the first time in a long while. The alien leader stepped forward and raised his hand. A circular portal opened beside them, glowing like a doorway made of stars. Armand took a deep breath, looking at the portal. "No turning back now," he whispered with a small smile. Lyra nodded and held his hand tightly. Together, they stepped toward the glowing light. As they entered, Armand felt warmth, weightlessness, and a strange new beginning behind them. Earth stood quiet under the night sky, and above it, more ships appeared, silently, shadows of a future not yet written. Armand's old life had ended, but a new world, a new destiny, had just begun.